I've just activated us live. Our we're just gone live. Maybe someone would tell us in the chat. They probably missed the first 9 minutes of what we've done. Why don't you start your question over again, and I'm going to give a simpler answer.
Okay. um, I'll be able to write that down later for anybody who wants it. Good morning to you, everyone. What we are discussing is something that happened yesterday where, well, anyway, Dr. Rosensweet had been invited some years back to speak on behalf of all of us who take compounded bioidentical hormones. And he spoke in Washington in front of the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, if I'm saying it correctly.
Yeah.
There's been a whole thing going on where we're very frightened that they're going to take our compounded bioidentical hormones away. There are a lot of people that are working on this. We're trying to get more and more and more people. And so that is what we were discussing prior to going live. Apparently, you just told a story that I was unaware of, but there was a place. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Yes, you know what? I think I'll cut to the chase.
Okay. That's
Many
a great
in our
story.
audience are very well aware that there's been pressure on the compounding pharmacist to stop compounding bioidentical hormones. That pressure is coming from the FDA. The FDA actually 2 years ago commissioned a special committee on the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine to examine the safety and efficacy of compounded bioidentical hormones. And I was invited to Washington, D.C. to speak in front of that committee. And the result of those committee's actions was a report called the NASEM report on the safety and efficacy of compounding bioidentical hormones. We could post that report. It's an egregious report from my perspective because it gives actual mechanisms to eliminate compounding bioidentical hormones.
That would not be good.
The conclusion of that committee was they're not FDA approved, and they gave no good reasons. They gave no good medical literature. It was just there's so many backstories to this that I'm not going to go into those backstories. But thousands of healthcare professionals who were prescribing over 8,000 compounding bioidentical pharmacies and pharmacists who are dispensing, we all became immediately and instantly aware that the FDA had set up a process in which the compounded bioidentical hormones could be eliminated. And we have been amazingly concerned, and we've set, at that time, I formed and I'm a co-chair of a coalition to protect compounded bioidentical hormones. We're not opposed to any other hormones that are out there. We're not opposed to the pharmaceutical industry. We believe in one big tent. We know the power and the value and the benefit and the sacred benefit that hormones have meant to women in menopause and men in andropause. We want people to have the freedom of choice.
That's it right there.
And I'm not opposed to manufactured hormones at all. I know for decades, Premarin and Prempro, although they're not my favorite choice, they did a world of good to millions of women. 18 million women were being treated by this in 2002. The women who were treated with these hormones did so much better than the women who went untreated. So I just want to emphasize that our coalition is a big tent. We're not opposed to any kind of hormones that are being manufactured or any FDA approved hormones, not at all. We are very opposed to the elimination of compounded bioidentical hormones. And that report made it obvious that there was an intention to do that. And so we've mobilized. We have this coalition. We have ways for women to speak directly to their congressional representatives. There's been a lot of activity, and the American Compounding Pharmacists, the APC, actually the American Pharmaceutical Compounders Organization, has raised and spent $1.5 million to make the public aware that the compounded bioidentical hormones are being threatened. And I spend part of my week every week devoted to trying to protect compounded bioidentical hormones.
And God bless that you do, and the compounding pharmacists that lobby on their own dime in Washington, you know.
Yes, they do. They know how important this is to the women and men of the planet Earth. And so many, and I say that, yes, they're in business and their businesses would be jeopardized. But these are caring people who go into the healthcare professionals. There is a tremendous high percent of people, from janitor in a hospital to neurosurgeon. There's a tremendously high percentage of people who really, 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 really care. And I know hundreds of compounding bioidentical hormone pharmacists, and they really, really care. They're not just in it for the business. They chose that rigorous profession that's so heavily regulated. It's one of the most heavily regulated things in the planet Earth.
So there's a little bit of I mean, it's heavily regulated, but it's being stated that it's not regulated yet.
This is really, that's false information.
Yeah, and
The
there's a
very,
lot of
the very hormones that these compounding pharmacists are dispensing, the hormones themselves, they're called active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs. These hormones are produced by manufacturers who are FDA approved. They're put in, these compounding pharmacists are individualizing dosages according to the prescriptions of licensed healthcare providers like myself, physicians, nurse practitioners. We're licensed to do this.
yes.
And we're licensed to individualize women. And this is very important. It's critical, because menopause medicine is not take a pill tonight and you'll be fine. It's a
Right.
highly individualized process for most women. So, my goodness, I'm so animated by this topic, and I can feel myself wanting to go in so many directions. So we've been in motion. COVID, I think, really slowed this process down. I think the FDA got swamped by COVID, rightfully so. But now there's been actions that are making us aware that this is now this is now getting revived. For example, 22 representatives from the United States Congress wrote a letter to the FDA urging the FDA to not jeopardize women's access and men's access to compounded bioidentical hormones.
Right.
That letter is readily available for those of you who want it. I could even send you a copy of it.
Please.
Carolyn,
Yeah, please.
if you'll just send me an email reminding me to do that. My schedule is rather full these days. And the FDA responded in an unfavorable way. They said, no, we're going to follow the recommendations of NASM, the National Academy of Science report. And that report has some measures in there that could end compounding. And one of the measures is that the hormones that are being compounded could be put on a list called too difficult to compound. That would prohibit compounding pharmacists from preparing these prescriptions. End of story. That mechanism is in place. That's what the NASM committee recommended. Too difficult to compound. They've been compounding things for thousands of years. They've been compounding hormones since the mid-1980s. They have these phenomenal, precise, analytical, computer-driven scales and machines to get the dosages impeccable right down to 0.000. They're so precise. These are easy to compound, and yes, they use wonderful equipment to do it. The kind you'd be really excited about to see and have your mind blown. Um, so they're not. That's just a ruse. That's just a mechanism they invented. Well, we knew that was in the original Nason report, and that was our greatest concern. And but things had been quiet until that letter was sent to the FDA, until the FDA responded. That rose a lot of our concern, but there was no timeline on it. And
Right.
what made the internet light up yesterday was a rumor that they were going to deploy that too difficult to compound provision in June of 2022. That's this coming June. I don't know if
Right.
are we frozen, Carolyn?
No,
Can you?
you're just you're like a weird animation. I don't know. I hear you perfectly, but you're kind of moving
Okay.
strangely.
So thunder and lightning rolled through our community, and I was very, very much involved in that and trying to uncover where did that rumor come from. And we don't have a precise answer. We know who started it, and we know that the source that this woman was given had to remain anonymous, so none of us could prove that the source was as connected as they said they were. So many of our dearest providers issued a retraction
That
yesterday.
they did. Yes.
At
I
the
mean,
end of the day, some of the players who had sent off the alarm, they issued a retraction
yes.
because we could not prove the validity of the source, and the source was said to be deeply embedded in and would know. We couldn't prove it, so we retracted it.
Right.
However, that has not stopped us. We believe that source, and so we're heightening our activity.
Yes.
And we're putting more mechanisms in place. People are meeting. Our coalition is going to meet. We had a wonderful, generous offer from one of someone who's benefacted, who's been a benefactor. And my team came up with a great idea this morning, and we're going to try and get the word out. And ultimately, women need to contact their congressional representatives, and probably more important is Nelson Virgil, who's so much a
Oh,
part of standard bearing for this, recommends that we can communicate directly with the FDA. So we're going to set up a mechanism on the websites to communicate directly with the FDA, or anyone who wanted to communicate directly with the FDA. The FDA probably has communication lines to receive feedback from the public. And there's going to be many opportunities to do that, hopefully. So we got
well,
fire in our belly, or
yes.
one of our team members reminds me to get fire in my tochas.
You're not going to show that to us, are you?
Do I have, do I have fire in my butt? We do. And so what I wish I could do is point you specifically to the link to the FDA so that you could start commenting. These mechanisms are being developed as we speak, and the funding thereof, because these are expensive mechanisms, it's being put in place as we speak. So I'll be able to announce, hopefully, as early as next week or the week after, this is what you do. You are a lover and proponent of compounded bioidentical hormones. This is the actions you take to
Oh
protect.
my God, that'll be amazing. Because, I mean, that went so fast. I made it to the Hormones SOS page. Nelson and I spoke. I mean, it just word of mouth, bam, 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 bam. I'm still getting a lot of activity in regards to. So,
If there was anything I would suggest that you do right now, is we want our communications to be impeccable.
yes,
And so here's everyone's homework if you care to do it and feel inspired to do it, is take time to craft your first draft of a communication to your congressional representatives, that would be your congressperson and your senators, and a communication to the FDA, a personal communication crafted in your words. And here's what I would request, dearly and deeply request, is we can make strong and passionate and clear communications, and we don't have to use the tactic that is just grievously and egregiously prevalent these days, of being hateful, of being oppositional. All of us, everyone, every human being you can know or name is a human being.
yes,
And even if others use tactics that are harsh or aren't the truth or are mean spirited, please, let's be different. We don't have to do that. We can base this on our positive passions. And we can express our pain, but we don't have to be hateful. As Nelson reminded us the other day, because he's had extensive and successful interactions with the FDA, he said, these are human beings, these are people. They have hearts, they care. We can reach them. That's why he wants us to deal with them directly, communicate with them directly. So I beg of you, I plead with you, please do not be divisive. I know I'm lingering on this, but I have great pain of what's happened to the American political system and the divisiveness and the harsh and not even truthful comments and mean spirited and hateful, and violent, emotionally violent communications. Let's not do that. Let's be different. We don't need to do that. Other human beings don't like it. Just think of yourself. If someone were to give you a hateful or a harsh, judgmental communication, how would you respond? We don't like that.
no, we get defensive.
Exactly, Carolyn. I've never
Yeah,
met a human being that likes someone being directly angry at them and harsh at them and mean spirited.
no. And Nelson did put it really well yesterday. And, he said these are human beings. He put up a video too with somebody with, I forget what it's called, A4M PC? I don't know. Anyway, wonderful man. And he said these are very bright people. And he did say exactly what you just said, like not kill with kindness, but certainly don't be hateful, no fight, no anger, don't write in anger, no blasting.
Exactly.
We're
We
all
can
in this
have strong
together.
feelings. We can express ourselves passionately, but realize we're talking to other human beings here. They have feelings. We do not need to insult them. We do not mean to. We don't not need to demean them, to be hateful to them. I think this is imperative, and I
No, I
think
think
it
you're
would
right.
give our. I think it would give our movement something that is brand new on the scene, so different than what's been going on for the last several years. So let's do it. Let's do it right. Let's do it with heart. Let's do it with love. And my request would be draft your first draft, because I think if we deploy these communications all in one fell swoop to the FDA and to our congressional representatives, it's going to be more meaningful if they get flooded. That's what happened in 2008. There was a flood of communications from American women. It wasn't a dribble here and a dribble there. So I know I've lingered on this.
No, well, thank you for doing so. So, really, to kind of wrap that up, for today, we do know that the vote has not been cast, that our hormones are going to be gone and done away with June
Right. They do
2022.
not, and we do not know yes or no for certain or no that there's a plan afoot to deploy that clause of putting the hormones on the too difficult to compound list in June. We don't know that that's true. We don't
Right.
know that it's false. We don't know, but it's a wake up call, and
Oh,
many of us are grateful for the wake up call. We need the moment.
absolutely.
So yes, Marita, starting with your own personal experience is the most poignant communication you can possibly make. So your suggestion to do that, citing your own personal experience with compounding pharmacists, with compounded hormones, with compounded hormone prescribers, yes, the more personal you get, the better it is.
And also, Marita, on the ins and outs of menopause, and also, I can send to you uh, at least my group that's been up for about 3 years now, the Hormones SOS, and Nelson Virgil from the Women's Health and HRT group has stuff up there, and there's a lot of different ways to go about doing this. We don't do it in anger. Thank you, Dr. R, for reminding us about that. Because
Also, I recommend that if I had my vision of what would be most powerful, is that we would create drafts right now, and then we would announce that okay, let's all send them at once.
that's such a great idea.
And here's the website, the link to the FDA and to the congressional representatives. This is the website. Here's the link to the website. Now, copy and paste your draft that you've been saving on this day and have a flood all in one day. That would be a notable event. We're gonna
Right.
we're gonna do that anyway. So even if you write them now, we're gonna call for Communication Day, and we'll announce it. We'll announce it in 1,000 different ways. What that Communication Day. So save your drafts. Yeah, let's coordinate this. So all of a sudden, their phones ring off the hook, as we would say.
They'd
All
have
righty.
to hire new staff just to answer the phones. Well, I will be aware, and Dr. R will make me aware. I would hope. Nelson will make me aware. We will be aware, and I do think that's a great idea. Sylvia says so. As of now, they are going to be stopping them,
No, let
and
me answer that. So
yeah,
no, the axe has not fallen,
thank you.
but they've set up the mechanism to end access. They've got the roadmap, but they have not declared them to stop.
Right,
Not
right, right. So at least for today, we could take a little bit of a breath. They are not stopped. They
right.
are not stopped. Okay. But the work still needs to be done. Your idea is excellent, and people will watch the replay of this interview. And yeah, thank you, because you've clarified, and I
I want
agree with you.
to say something else about it. We put there's so many people who have put so much time, energy, and money into this process of saving compounded bioidentical hormones. And many of us, over the time that we've been doing this, have developed a concern. And the concern is people aren't going to act. They're not going to do the actual communication to the FDA or to their congressional representatives. They're not going to do what it's going to take. They're not going to march on Washington because there's no inspiration to do it. It's going to take a catastrophic event to mobilize the pain to the place where something is going to be done that is action that will be listened to and that will catch the attention of the news media, will catch the attention of the Congress and of the FDA.
Right.
And we've been concerned that it was going to take a very severe action to awaken up everyone who that matters to. And in 2017, a study was done, and there was over 2.5 million American women on compounded bioidentical hormones. That's 2017. If I had to estimate, that's double now. We're talking 6-7 million American women and men. So there's a lot of people affected here. So, and all of us who've been involved in this, and especially the most knowledgeable ones, including the lobbyists who are very familiar with dealing professionally with congressional representatives, is everyone's just hoping and praying we don't have to react to an egregious event, that we were proactive, and before anything goes into place, such as the too difficult to compound, that's the end when they do that. To have to fight them after that's been deployed is much harder. So the professionals that are on our coalition, and we have attorneys and lobbyists, and we have lobbyists who have been lobbying for the compounded bioidentical hormone industry for 20, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
There are some real professionals here and attorneys who've been dealing with functional medicine for 30, 40 years.
Yes.
Their level of expertise on our coalition is just astounding. They're all saying, boy, if we can possibly get the women and men to rise up and do what the appropriate action is right now, now's the time before we have to react to some harsh thing that's been deployed. So we know that sometimes it takes the pain to activate, but we want to be proactive. So that's all I want to say about it today. And I promise to continue this discussion going to the extent that it's appropriate to do so.
Dr. Rosensweet, thank you so much for making us feel better. It's a pretty big wake-up call, and we'll just keep it moving in kindness. Okay, so on the subject of hormones and menopause, a question, I have a few of them, came in stating, I am planning on switching from patches to biased cream. I am going to be starting at the same dose, which is 0.5. She's taking a patch, 0.5 estradiol. She's terrified of getting any side effects, but she wants to make sure that she's making this transition correctly. And she doesn't know exactly quite how to navigate her way from a 0.5 patch to 0.5 cream. And also, she wants to know if she can figure out what amount of estriol to take. Is this a question you can answer?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
That's a fabulous question. And I'd like to preface the details of the answer with, this is not hard, and it certainly is not dangerous. And so there's really nothing to be concerned about or fear here. I really want to emphasize that.
Thank you.
I'm a medical doctor. I'm aware that there are certain medications that someone could be on that you do not want to stop them abruptly. No way.
Right.
Like, you don't want someone who's got very high blood pressure, who's on a high blood pressure medication, to say, gee, I don't think I can take these anymore. No, you do not want to do that. You want to have there's medications you do not stop. Hormones are very different. They're different. Someone who's been on hormones for 20 years, for example, a wild example, could stop them abruptly. There would be no harsh harm. There would be long-term issues that would result from what happens when you lose your hormones: bones, muscles, brain, arteries, vagina, erection, on and on and on. But it won't be the abruptness of stopping them that's going to pose any problem at all. Gradually, you'll start experiencing what it feels like to have less hormones than your body wants and needs. So you can stop them abruptly. So making a switch from a patch to a cream or a gel or organic oils, I always suggest our organic oils, no big deal. You can stop that patch abruptly and you could wait a week or two or a month, or you could start the hormones the day you pulled off the patch. It's not a big deal. Now, we have calculators that calculate the mathematical equivalent. For example, the patch has a certain amount of estradiol in it, and the patch is expressed in a very unusual way in the hormone world. It's a valid way. The patch that this questioner is referring to is actually a 0.05 or a 50 microgram patch. Now, this is very different than the language used in the world of creams and gels and topicals. When you convert to a dosage of a topical estradiol, for example, a common strength is 1 milligram per milliliter, and you dispense 1 milliliter. Or it could be 4 milligrams per milliliter of estradiol, and you'd put it in a toppy click that would dispense a quarter of a milliliter, so you would be applying to your skin 1 milligram a day. This language is entirely different than patch language. Patch language, patch language refers to the amount that shows up in the body per day. So that's 0.05, or actually another way to say that is 50 micrograms. That's what's showing up in the body. The example I gave of a cream or a gel or an oil, that estradiol 1 milligram per milliliter, and you apply a milliliter, thus you apply 1 milligram. That refers to how much you're actually applying to your skin. It's very different language. So don't do any funky math where you go, okay, 0.5. Well, I'll just convert that to a 0.5 estradiol. Don't do that because it's way off. And it isn't even 0.5. It happens to be a 0.05. Yes, that 0.05 or that 50 micrograms in dealing with the patch is referring to what shows up in the body. It's not saying the amount of estradiol that the patch is applied to the skin. Ridden that horse long enough.
Well, you did a little video, and I put that up on the ins and outs too, explaining some of the math.
Now, let me. This question went further. Here's one way to do it. My favorite way to do it. Who's ever prescribing the bias, because that's what sounds like being prescribed, they have to have some familiarity of what strengths bias come in. So they're going to give you a standard prescription of bias, and you can start low and gradually increase over time. Like if you pull off that patch and you're a woman who had symptoms, you pull off that patch and you wait a while and those symptoms are going to return. Let's say that you were a woman who was having hot flashes, and then the patch totally alleviated the hot flashes. Fantastic. And you pull off that patch. Within a day or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, those hot flashes are going to return. And if you have the toppy click or the jar, or however they're going to dispense the new bias to you, and they've done a reasonable dose, you just start low and you gradually increase the amount that you're applying to your skin until you get the same effect that you had on the patch. You got rid of the hot flashes and you feel good. That's one of my favorite ways to do it. We have gone to the extent to have these wonderful calculators thanks to my son, one of our chief business partners, who's
It just
designed
so
these
happens to be
amazing calculators where you enter in the amount of cream or gel you are on, and it converts it to the organic oils. So you're on a quarter of a ml or one click of a biased or an estradiol cream. You enter that in, and it converts it to the number of drops of our biased and organic oils. These calculators are beautiful, and mathematically, they're perfectly accurate, milligram for milligram. We've got one of those for the patch, too. However, the math isn't the same, and it doesn't matter that much. That's why I wanted to start with the practical way to do it. So, for example, a common prescription of biased, I'm gonna refer to that patch, that 50 microgram patch. A common prescription of biased in our organic oils is 30 milligrams per milliliter, 80-20, because biased, you got to specify the ratio. And if you did one drop in the morning and two drops in the evening, you'd pretty much mathematically land to where that patch was applying. Isn't that nice? Some people it'll be one drop in the morning and one drop in the evening. We'll put you at about the same level as the patch. Or if you're using a gel or a cream, a common bias gel is 2.5 milligrams per milliliter. You put that in a toppy click, you're dispensing a quarter of an ml. You're going to start with one click and see if that alleviates your symptoms as good as that toppy click did. And if it doesn't, if you're going 3 days or 5 days on that one click of that common bias prescription, and it doesn't alleviate your hot flashes, maybe it improves them, but it doesn't alleviate them, hey, the next thing you do is you increase to one click in the morning and one click in the evening. You're starting low, you're gradually increasing to alleviate symptoms of estrogen insufficiency. And if in the process of doing the switch, you start getting breast tenderness, well, you got too much. So you back down, you take less. I want to give you the practical way to make that conversion. Now, we can make that conversion, and we can get you in the ballpark, because that 50 microgram patch comes in, for those of you who understand the math, at about 0.75 milligrams of estradiol equivalent a day. So if you were doing pure estradiol, if you took 3/4 of a milligram of estradiol, for many women who are on that 50 microgram patch, you'd more or less get the equivalent. But you're always going to have to experiment. It could be too little, it could be too much, because absorption is different, and absorption varies woman to woman. So think about that. If your prescription dispensed something of 0.75 milligrams of estradiol, you'd pretty much get it. Now I want to convert that to biased. So let me pull that up, a calculator to do that. I'm sorry I didn't have this ready. That would have been a good idea. But if you did a biased prescription, well, I'm going to put that on hold. But my main thing I want to say is don't worry about the conversion. You definitely do not have to be afraid. The worst thing that could possibly happen from your new prescription is you'd have too little and your hot flashes will return, so you'd increase the amount that you're applying. Or you'd have too much and you get symptoms of overdose. So that'd be the worst that would happen. And none of that would be a problem, really. It'd just be a slight inconvenience. Make sense? So make the conversion. Now, what I'm trying to do is catch up with and give you you asked about bias because you asked about estriol.
Right.
And there's some math that needs to be done there, because when you combine estriol with estradiol, which is what we always like to do, the strength of estriol is less than the strength of estradiol. So let me see if I can give you a cream dose, because you want to do creams. I'd say link up with the organic oils, but you want to do the creams. So I'm gonna try and get close. If you just bear with me for a minute, I'm so sorry to not be prepared for this.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot there, Doctor.
But you bear with me, I'll get it. So if you did a biased that was, I'm getting there.
Are you still there?
I am still here.
Okay. Okay.
I'm working behind the scenes here.
Got it.
A lot of these things are dispensed in toppy clicks these days. These are little containers that if you click, it squirts out a dose. And that's what I'm trying to get you. That's why it's a little more laborious. So, for example, if you did a bias that was 5 milligrams per milliliter, 80-20, 80% estriol and 20% estradiol, and it was put in a toppy click, one toppy click would dispense about one click of that toppy click, and those are usually a quarter of a milliliter that they dispense, would click about roughly half of what that patch is delivering to you. So if you did one click in the morning and one click in the evening, you'd pretty much come in at what that 50 microgram patch was doing. Now, I say that we used to get so mathematically precise about those conversions, only to learn that women absorb things different. They absorb creams and gels different than they do the oils. They absorb creams and gels and oils different than they do the patch. So you always are faced with a basic discovery process. But I think that, if you would do a biased cream or gel that was what I told you, 5 milligrams per milliliter, 80%, 20%, 80% estriol, 20% estradiol, and you did one click of a clicker that delivered a quarter of a milliliter. That's one of the types of clicks. There's other volume dispensing clicks. You do about half of what you're getting daily from the patch. So 2 clicks a day would get you somewhere in the ballpark of what you're getting from the actual patch. And I always recommend splitting those clicks up. I would do a click in the morning, a click in the evening, or go to the organic oils. Wow, that's fantastic. Get your prescriber to do a 30 milligram per milliliter 80-20 and do 1 drop in the morning and 1 drop in the evening, and you're pretty much in the same ballpark. There's some information.
Yeah. Again, I put that video up that you did that explains it really beautifully, and you just explained it right on the spot really beautifully. And I thank you very, very, very much for that. The math is so important. But like you always say,
the interesting thing is, Carolyn, the math seems like it's important, but all these delivery systems, they vary woman to woman. And so there was a whole several years where we dropped the math and we just said, start low and gradually increase to start the process of dose discovery over again, as we describe in our book. There's no harm done. It's no big deal. And the dosages that we're talking about, the dosage of that 50 microgram patch, that's a solid, fair, good dosage that's going to serve so many women. So other women need a little more than that. For some women that need a little less. You're switching from solid, good treatment, dosage-wise, to if someone prescribes like a bias to 5 milligrams per milliliter 80/20, you're dealing with a solid, good treatment that it's hard to do excessive amounts. So don't worry about it. That's the main thing I'd like to say is just that you'll be fine.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. I want to get, we have a few minutes left, and I want to get to this question. I think it's important. Many women are not able to get the 24-hour urine test done. So many of us are not sure quite what to do. Do you feel, Dr. Rosensweet, that perhaps doing just serum blood testing would be better than doing a regular blood test? Thank you.
Better than 24-hour urine.
No. Well, they're not able to get the 24-hour urine test, so they're getting blood tested. Just regular blood testing.
Yeah, this is a great question, Carol.
I know, huh?
Let's look at the history of treating women with hormones. For years and years and years, the most popular treatment was with an oral estrogen derived from horse urine, Premarin, and its cousin Prempro. And there was 2 dosages available out of the gate. And by 2002, 18 million American women were on this. And the vast majority of those women did terrific. And the prescribers and the organizations that represent them, like the North American Menopause Society or the American College of Gynecology, they recommended, and they still do recommend, do not test. Go by symptoms.
Right.
The reason they recommended do not test is they knew there was problems with blood tests. Like, when did you take your last dose? It's called pharmacokinetics. When did it show up, and when how do you time it so that you're measuring a peak output, or it could have disappeared from the serum when you're taking the blood. Like when you apply hormones to the skin, it goes into the blood, but it disappears from the blood, it goes to the tissues. It's what's in the tissues that counts. So the North American Menopause Society and the American College of Gynecology wisely said, don't test, treat by symptoms. And think about it, 18 million American women on Premarin and Prempro, they never got their hormone levels tested. You couldn't test for Premarin anyway. There wasn't any test. And you know what? The majority of those women did fabulous. So let's get off this worry concern. Here's another thing about these hormones. Hormones are the most powerful biochemicals in your body. And when you take an overdose of them, most of the time, scream at you. You hate it. You just wouldn't want it. You go, what the heck is going on here? I was feeling decent, and now I'm on this dose of hormones. I feel awful.
Right. Make that call.
Plenty of exceptions to that. But the largest percentage of women, I'd make a wild guess, 80% of women who go on hormones and they go on the wrong dose, oh man, they hate it. Like the first I learned about it was thyroid. One of my mentors said, when you determine that someone is hypothyroid, you don't know what dose to write down your prescription pad. Humans vary person to person, how much they need, how sensitive they are to anything you possibly give them, how fast they're going to absorb them. So here's what you do. You start on a low dose, you gradually increase that dose, and along the process of increasing that dose, if you're spot on, they were hypothyroid, you're going to alleviate their symptoms of hypothyroidism. And they're going to feel better, and they're going to like it. But if you go too high with thyroid, they're going to get egregious symptoms of overdose. They're going to get, their heart is going to race, they're going to get heart palpitations, they're going to get nervous, they're going to develop a tremor. So you've got a built-in protection. They're not going to go too high on thyroid, or if they do, they're going to back down or stop immediately because they'll get these rough symptoms of overdose. Well, the same is true for most women, not all, with estrogen. You give a woman the right amount of estrogen, bam, it's life-changing. You give a woman too little estrogen in menopause, she's not going to quite like it, but you can gradually increase it. You give most women too much estrogen, they're going to get breast tenderness, nipple pain, breast pain. They're going to get irritable. They're going to swell. These hormones are so powerful that we don't do well with overdose. You give a woman too much testosterone, every woman on the planet Earth needs replenishing testosterone at least by 3 years in the menopause, and most women need it immediately. And testosterone is as important as any hormone the women ever have. You give a woman too much testosterone, she's going to get pimples. She's going to get oily skin. She's going to grow hair on her chin and her mustache area. She's going to get irritable. She's going to want to punch people out.
Sounds
These things,
wonderful.
these things scream very loudly at us.
Yes.
Progesterone, you give most women too much progesterone, it's going to be too calming. If they take it at night, they're going to wake up and feel like they had taken an overdose of a sleeping pill. They're going to be so groggy and dizzy. These things scream at us. There are exceptions, but if you're dealing with a seasoned practitioner who's been educated and has experience in prescribing, they're not going to prescribe you some wild, crazy dose.
Right.
I use the example in our teaching videos of Xanax. There are actually some prescribers out there, and I was actually one of them, that I didn't understand the milligrams of Xanax because I never prescribed it. But anyone who prescribes Xanax, if I say to them, why don't you give your patient a 1/4 milligram of Xanax and let them find their dose by taking 1 or 2 of those, or maybe 3, they'll go, yeah, man, that's good. That's a good range. That's a safe range. If I said to that prescriber, why don't you give your patient 10 milligrams of Xanax, they're going to go, are you crazy? That's way beyond that most human beings could even tolerate, and it'll put them to sleep for a week or worse. I would never give them 10 milligrams. I wouldn't give them more than a half or 1 milligram, because these prescribers, they know their dose of Xanax. They've been prescribing Xanax, and they know what that dose is, and they know the range of what's decent and reasonable and what's ridiculously high that could put someone's life in jeopardy. They're not going to prescribe those high dosages because they're familiar with the dosages, because they prescribe these things on a daily basis. Many healthcare providers dealing with people with anxiety. Same is true in the world of bioidentical hormones, or in the world of hormones. People who have got education, they know what to write on their prescription pad. And when you tell them a certain dose, they're going to go, oh, that's way too high. I know what the dose range is of what's safe. So what I'm trying to say here is, if you go to someone who specializes in treating women in menopause, who has an education on how to treat women in menopause, our minimal education is 12 hours. Someone who has an education, in that education, they're going to learn proper doses to prescribe. So they're going to dispense something from a pharmacy that you're going to be able to go, this is fine. If they know what they're doing, they're not going to overdose you. That's what I'm trying to say.
Got it.
There's a lot of protections in there, and oh my goodness.
I know. I didn't want to say anything. I thought maybe you'd forget. You didn't.
Carolyn Shapiro.
Oh, David Rosensweet, MD.
You go beyond.
Yeah.
Well, I understand. It's only an expression of your deep and dear enthusiasm for this work.
Well, I was trying to take advantage, but I got caught. All right. So you know the drill. Happy weekend to everybody. Yeah. And to you too, Dr. Rosensweet.
You too, Carolyn.
We will see everybody on Tuesday. Got the questions? I think we answered them well. Thank you so much for talking about Washington. I think it made us feel better, but we're still on it. And so I'm going to say goodbye to everybody and wish everybody well. And to you too, Dr. R. And we will speak on Tuesday.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Okay. See you later, everybody.
Thank you so much, Carolyn.
Thank you.